Yeah, to start off, my name is Juma Lawrence, just behind this Physiotech account. Today's session, that is the SIT Tech Talks, we're going to have, which is brought to you by Physiotech and Mentalist, whereby Physiotech is a community and Mentalist is the product built by Physiotech to cut off or to bridge the gap between the mentors and the mentee, whereby one time we'll find you'll able to have Colleagues as your mentor on our space that is mentalist. You can join the white list for mentalist to have a test of it on the beta version, which we might launch very soon. That is I'll share the link to the chat. So on today's today's SIT Tech Talks, we're going to have Collins Hillary, who is with a software developer and has got an expertise in software development, DevOps, cybersecurity, and currently is focusing on building his brand cross global. Maybe he'll tell us more about uh, himself before as he start on. Collins, welcome to the podium. This space is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope everyone is having a fantastic weekend. So do I start, or I just give a brief introduction of myself, then of the topic of the day, then we can proceed, if that's okay.
Yep, that's okay.
Great. So my names are Collins Hillary. I'm the CEO of Devligence Limited, and of course with the focus on software development, cybersecurity, AI, and the VR, what's called augmented reality and virtual reality area. So Devligence Limited, we deal with basically software development from web application, mobile. We also have our own inner products that we are pushing. So, and the topic of the day is unleashing the power of Sapien API Gateway. So I'll share my screen so that we just kick off. It's a Saturday evening, so I believe people are have plans. So let me just share screen. Okay. So by a show of hands, maybe on the chat, how many people have dealt with or have knowledge on gateways in general? So if you have any experience with gateway in terms of this software development angle, or even cybersecurity in other field, you can just text on the chat and say hi or I, so that I know the kind of angle I'm going to take on this. If I see a blank, then I think I'll have to start from scratch. No one? Okay. Okay. So the topic of the day is unleashing the power of Sapien API Gateway. So basically, I'll break down what Sapien is and what a normal gateway is. Okay, and the purpose of this talk is to impact the knowledge of how API gateways can be able to accelerate software development of applications in an organization, how easy it is to use the gateway, and the kind of scalability and security that a gateway has. Yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any time before we proceed, so that we are all on the same path.
On that note, I'm able to launch a poll just to get the audience experience on the gateways.
Yes.
You can do it on the poll. I've launched it.
Okay. I have seen it. Okay. So what will we be talking about for this session? We'll explore the transformative capabilities of this gateway, especially the Sapien gateway, and we'll delve into how organizations can leverage these API gateways to unlock the potential of the digital ecosystem. Now, gateways came about in this new era where we have people moving from a monolithic architecture to a more microservice-based architecture. So this is where the gateway comes into play. And of course, even if you have a monolithic architecture, depending on how you build it, you can also use the gateway. Yeah. So we'll discover how this gateway solution empowers businesses to accelerate, as I said, innovation, the agility and streamline integration processes, together with the security aspect of it. Yeah. So we'll start with a quick introduction of the gateway and the Sapien API gateway. Then we'll discuss some points on how it simplifies the integration challenges, then a bit of security and governance. I'll give you a highlight of what the Sapien gateway looks like. Then we can do a demo if there's still be time, and then a conclusion and a question and answer. Okay, any questions still there?
Okay. Yeah, on that note, majority of our audience are not familiar with the gateways. Maybe it will be a good start on the same.
Yeah. I'll start by explaining what a gateway is.
Thank you.
And then we proceed. So what is a gateway? I believe most of the people in the call are in the IT tech industry. So there's some basic terms that I'll use in case not understandable. Then feel free to just raise your hand. So what is a gateway? A gateway is a software. Basically, it's a software that takes application users' request, then routes it to. I'll give you an example. Then routes it to more and more backend services. So think of it in this manner. We have the API structure. In the API, we have, if you are building a separated non-monolithic structure, we have the front-end guys, the front-end people working on React, HTML, and on that side, who are consuming APIs from the backend side, APIs built in any language. Yeah. So we have a backend that's generating the APIs, and we have a frontend that is consuming those APIs. So a gateway comes in the middle of both sides. So we have the backend requests passing through a gateway. Then the gateway pushes those requests to the front end. Yeah. So we have the interaction between the front end and the back end is more or less completely separate, because for the front end to access the back end, you need to have the gateway in the middle. It needs to pass through the gateway. So this is where now the gateway has to have all these features where we have ensuring security, ensuring the scalability of the platform and such, which we'll discuss later. So is there any question on what a gateway is? Because the rest of the content will be based on that logic, that it's in the middle of both the front end and the back end. So that application that sits in the middle, that is a gateway. Okay. So what is Sapien API Gateway? So Sapien is a product that it's actually in the beta testing currently, so it's not fully released, but Sapien is the only African based gateway. Of course, with issues with data protection and such, it becomes very easy for organizations to use this gateway so that their data passes within Kenya or Africa and does not go to other countries, the routing of that traffic. So Sapien API Gateway is just a normal gateway with added features. And of course, we've made it easy for developers to to use it. So it's basically a gateway, fully managed, as I said, African-made service. It makes it easier for developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure API at scale. Okay, so just move on to what the Sapien, and of course that I mentioned what the gateway does. So it acts as a front door for applications to access data, business logic, or functionality from your backend services. Okay? So using the Sapien or any API gateway. So the context here is a gateway. Either Sapien, either AWS. AWS also has its own inbuilt gateway. There are other open source gateways like Kong and many others. There's Tyke. So there's a lot of API gateways. So I gave Sapien as an example because I have access to it. I can show you how it works. So for the gateway, you can use RESTful APIs. So these are APIs, REST APIs, WebSocket APIs. You can use the content can be in XML, in JSON. And it can enable real-time two-way communication applications. The gateway supports containerized and serverless workloads as well as web applications. Okay, so if you have a backend that is in a microservice architecture, so microservice architecture, I mean we have, for example, let's take Jumia. So Jumia has a platform. There is the front end, which we all interact with. But then on the back end, instead of having the logic that handles listing of products, the logic that handles adding items to your cart, the logic that handles payment of those items. So instead of having all that code base in one area, in one, okay, more or less folders, if you want to think of it from a structure angle, a microservice architecture explains that instead of having all that logic in one place, then you separate them into different code bases. So we have a specific microservice, a service that handles listing of products on the side, and a service that handles maybe checkout on the side. So we have all that loosely integrated, loosely coupled, but separate entities. So you see, when you have such a structure, it means the front-end guys, without the gateway, they will need to call each single API. They need to call an API that links to the product's service. They need to call another API that links to the checkout service. They call another API that links to profile information. So that becomes tedious for front-end guys to basically communicate with the backend. And of course, it's not scalable. Okay? So a gateway comes in the middle in such that the front-end guy only calls one API. And now from that one API, the gateway routes the traffic to whatever service that has been requested. And I'll show you an example when we get to the demo. So we have the front-end application talking to the gateway, saying, hi, gateway, I need product information for this product. So the gateway automatically knows which microservice, a small service, which microservice to call. So it goes to the product service and returns, goes to checkout service. So it becomes easy to scale your backend and to scale your frontend because you only have one single endpoint to call. Yeah, so that's what the gateway does. So a bit of analytics of Sapien, the Sapien Africa Gateway. In terms of microtransactions, we have a company called Grain Connect. They have a product. So they consume 38.5% of our traffic because they deal with microtransactions, payments, registrations, and all that. We also have a product called Maria, Text 3.8. Maria is more or less online ticketing system. Then, of course, we have BoardHub. BoardHub is a board management solution, entirely African-based. It's the only product around, so it takes the huge share with 57.7%. So this gateway is already in use, but not released to the public. So that's why I already have a bit of analytics on it. So let's see how the gateway simplifies integration challenges. So the gateway acts as a central entry point for client applications to access multiple backend services. So the client applications to access microservices or APIs on the backend. So the gateway simplifies integration challenges by acting as an abstraction layer between clients and backend services. So you'll hear this the whole presentation. The gateway is at the middle of the front end and the back end. That's the whole point of a gateway. It has to act as an abstraction layer. Okay. So some of the features I'll just go through real quick are features that enable this kind of seamless integration. We'll have single entry point. So the single entry point, as I said, the client, the front end can access the backend through one single API. So instead of clients directly connecting to individual multiple microservices or backend services, they interact with the API gateway. See, so this provides a unified interface and a single entry point for all API requests. So the gateway gives out one single endpoint, and that is what the client will call. Then it will route traffic to the required resource on the backend. So the gateway also does protocol and request translation. So more or less what I'll be discussing are the qualities of a good gateway. If you feel or if you want to develop your own custom, these are some of the things you need to put in mind that the gateway should do. Yeah. So we have protocol and request translation. So the gateway can handle any kind of protocol. So if you see, we have scenarios if you've worked with in developing client applications, you'll see there's a time you'll be having requests in HTTP, then probably the backend is not hosted. So we have that conflict of protocol and the cause error and such, the cross-origin errors. So the gateway can do that protocol translation for you. So the client can call the gateway in HTTP, but then the gateway translates that HTTP request to HTTPS on your backend. So your backend services receives encrypted requests, but what was sent from the client to the gateway was unencrypted. So HTTPS, it does that conversion for you, or even the other way around if you want it to do the other way around. Okay, so the other thing that the gateway does is request translation. So request translation, think of it as let's say we have the front end, the client. The client is working with XML, not JSON. It works with okay. Let's say the client works with JSON. The client wants JSON data. The front end guy wants to deal with JSON data. But the backend team, the backend is only giving XML feedbacks, XML responses. So instead of having the front-end guy to change or the backend team to change the way they're handling their requests, the responses, the gateway can be configured to translate that request. So we have the client sending JSON, then it translates that JSON to XML, then the backend receives XML as they want, see? So it makes it scalable. So if maybe it's the other way around, the backend sends JSON, front-end needs XML, it does the conversion. So that's what I mean with request translation. Protocol is HTTP, HTTPS. Request is more or less the request body. Okay, the request body can be converted to either XML or JSON. Of course, if there are other protocols or the request body kind of data that's required, I think it can be integrated. I haven't tried, but I've tried XML and JSON because of the mostly commonly used formats. And so a gateway helps you to do that without changing your code base a lot. Okay. The other thing it does is request routing and aggregation. I don't know if anyone has used GraphQL currently, or is using, if you used GraphQL, you should check out a gateway. Okay, they have a gateway. It's called Apollo. You should check out Apollo. They have a gateway in their structure. It deals with GraphQL, which is really good. So what it does is it does the aggregation and the routing. So a gateway's main purpose is to route traffic. That's why it's in the middle. Okay? So the gateway can route requests to the appropriate backend services based on the request destination or path. It can also aggregate multiple backend services. So in our case for Jumia, if I have this product page, okay, let's say my personal account profile, you can have the list of items I've already added to cart, then my name, email, and all that. So instead of making multiple requests, I make a request to get the product information, the product list information in my cart, then another for my profile. You can send one request to the gateway. Then the gateway combines both requests. It takes the product information from the product service. It takes your profile information from, I don't know, maybe the user authentication service. It combines that request, then it returns to you the data as one instead of two. So for the front end, you only call one endpoint and get all the data you want, okay, for the different services. So it makes it easier for the front end also to develop much faster. So that's also that's all about aggregation and routing the traffic. Of course, there is the authentication and authorization, which is also from a security angle. So instead of the backend, the Jumia backend developing an authentication module, okay, which of course it allows, if you have your own authentication module, you can route traffic to that, return a token, then that token can be used. But a gateway should be able to authenticate the requests. Yeah? So if you choose, you want the request to be authenticated using JWT or bearer tokens, or I don't know, basic tokens. So the gateway should allow that. So that means it should check any request coming to it, to your services. Is it authorized? Is it authenticated? So instead of spending time creating an authentication module, the gateway handles that for you automatically. So that's also a benefit of using gateways in your development, and of course, organizational system structures. Of course, there's a caching and performance optimization. So the gateway, instead of refetching data in the backend, the same data that hasn't changed, it stores its own cache of data, such that when the front end, the client asks for data and it hasn't changed, instead of taking 4 milliseconds, it takes maybe 2 or 1, because the data is already there. It doesn't need to fetch on the backend. So that leads to performance optimization for the whole infrastructure. There's a monitoring and analytics. Of course, a gateway should be able to provide a bit of analytics, which APIs have been called. What is the request rate per, I don't know, per minute, per 5 minutes? Which APIs are down, which one have errors? So the gateway should be able to provide such kind of reports. So when you log in, you are able to see these APIs are failing, these ones are taking long to load, and that will lead, of course, to optimizing your architecture so that everything goes on smoothly. Are we good till there, or I've talked too much? Are there any question? Okay. Great.
Not yet on the chat.
Not yet? Okay. So we'll move on to enhancing security and governance. So this is also a quick highlight on the kind of features that help a gateway to perform these functions. The slides I will give the admin, so that in case you want to go through them, they'll be available. So some of the features, and of course, for any system being built, security is at the topmost of the list. Security should be ensured in whatever kind of system, a website, a web app, a mobile app. Security is key. So the gateway does not get a free pass. The gateway should ensure security is ensured. Okay? So the gateway can act as a protective layer, implementing security measures, enforcing access controls, monitoring API activity, enabling governance across the whole API ecosystem. So some of the features, as we already discussed on authentication authorization, where you can set which kind of authentication you want your APIs to pass through. And of course, like for Sapien, if you say you want, I don't know, maybe basic authentication for your APIs, you also get an option to say which routes, which paths for the APIs should not be authenticated. So think of it, if all my requests from the front end need to have a bearer token, then I don't want my login, register, forgot password to also authenticate, because you don't authenticate while logging in. You need to, login doesn't need to be authenticated for you to send your credentials or forgot password, or, you know, on that angle. So you can be able to ignore some routes from authentication. Rate limiting and throttling. So rate limiting and throttling basically is you set how long or how many requests can hit your backend per minute, or mostly it's per minute. Yeah. So you can say we need from each single API to only hit our backend 5 consecutive times. If they do less, if they do maybe the 6th time, of course it returns an error, timeout or something. Then it refreshes, it like returns that API's count to 0. So this allows for it prevents abuse and protects the backend services from excessive traffic or malicious attack. So if someone wants to bring your application down, it will be very hard, because if they send anonymous requests to your gateway, the gateway will be tracking each API coming and how many times they're hitting per minute. So the DDoS distribution denial of service, that is reduced to the bare minimum using the API gateway. We talked about encryption and data protection, where we have the protocol conversion from HTTP to HTTPS. Of course, it terminates the SSL and TLS connections. It can decrypt requests, encrypt responses, and all that. So this is all about encryption using the protocols for the requests. We talked about audit logs and monitoring. This is also part of security, which any system should be able to produce logs. Normal logs for any system, created by, deleted by, updated, and all that. So for the gateway, it should be able to log the API request, the responses, and any associated metadata that is passing through the gateway itself. Okay? So this will enable better governance, security compliance, by providing that audit trail for all API activity passing through it to your backend or to wherever you're directing the traffic to. Okay? So this helps to identify potential security breaches, monitor traffic patterns, and ensure regulatory compliance. So this is audit logs and monitoring. A gateway should be able to provide that. Another thing a gateway helps from a security angle is it sets the standard for implementing security policies and governance frameworks. So in an organization, if you're using the gateway, it will help you to apply the security policies and governance for API management on one place, instead of every backend needs to implement these security practices. And then there's a developer who doesn't want to implement those. Then there's that substandard and all that. So a gateway should be able to help you to manage the security policies, the access controls, compliance, and requirements. So this all we have talked about so far are the things that give a gateway, make a gateway better. That makes it like the best standard that can be used for organization. So a bit, this will be short for the Sapien structure. As I said, this is how a gateway should basically look like. We have the mobile. So the front end can be different. We can have the mobile client, the web client. And the good thing with a gateway is instead of having just one API gateway, you can have multiple gateways. We can have a gateway that handles traffic from mobile client. You can have a gateway that handles from web client. You can have another gateway that handles maybe IoT, the IoT clients and all that. But then, as you can see, we have the clients on this end, then we have the gateway in the middle, then we have the different microservices, the different business logics in the backend. So maybe this, as we said for Jumia, this is product microservice, this is profile management microservice and such. So Sapien Gateway also has the same architecture because it's a gateway. Yeah. We have a couple of modules, which we'll see. We have the security compliance on the gateway, the rate limiting and throttling. So for Sapien, the rate limiting, we are not giving options to the users to set. We set our own because basically it's our server which will be hit if you're hosting with us. But for custom applications for organizations, then you have the option of setting the rate limiting. We have the traffic and protocol conversion as always, route exemption and whitelisting within the gateway, and service definition. So service definition, I'll explain in the demo, but just to highlight, service definitions is for you to use a gateway, you need to tell it where your backend services are. Yeah? You need to tell it. So hi gateway, my product microservice is in this location. This is the IP address. My backend service for profile manage is in this location. So that is what we call service definitions. So just pass through this. This is the dashboard, the current dashboard for the Sapien gateway. I'll explain. This is a couple of analytics. This is what we say the service definitions. This information can be received, can be viewed on our website, the sapienafrica.com website. So for the service definition, like here I have my user service, my user service is in this URL on this port. This other service is in this URL on this other port. Yeah. So you define, you tell the gateway where your backend is hosted. And the good thing is, this allows for you to host your backend services anywhere, or the front end service anywhere. You just host. There's no need of using, I don't know, because I know I've tried for a couple of gateways where you need to host your application with them first. But for a gateway, you should be able to host, even if you'll host your backend services at home and there's access to Wi-Fi where there's no downtime, then you can be able to still use the gateway. Just direct the requests that come to the user service to this URL. Okay. Of course, there's a traffic conversion, JSON and XML. Security compliance, we have none if there's no need for authentication, basic, JWT, and an API key. API key is based on your consumer key and secret. Okay, so before we go to the demo, are there any questions on this? As I set up, still have a few minutes left. Any questions?
Collins, maybe on my end.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I've said that the Sapien API is not yet pushed out to the public,
yeah,
are there are there maybe a community of support resources available for the developers? Maybe we intend to work with the APIs, with the Sapien API.
Yes. So what we did, we started last week, but we are releasing the gateway as an open source project. So that means developers can be able to contribute to the whole architecture of the gateway in a controlled environment. There's the developers, now Ango is asking for the APIs, so that will also release to the public for you guys to consume. So currently we are still pushing the angle of the open source because we feel that's important for the community to be able to contribute.
There is also a question on the chat. Is there authentication between the backend and the APIs?
The APIs, the request from the gateway or from the client angle? If you could just clarify, Dixon.
Dixon, you can unmute and then clarify the question. From the gateway.
From the gateway, yeah. So what happens is once you set the authentication on the gateway, the front-end client will send its authentication, maybe the bearer token, which you already generated. Now it's for the backend system to be able to, once the authentication has been, the request have been authenticated on the gateway, of course it checks if the token is valid, if it's legit, then it pushes that token together with now the request body from the client to the backend. So the backend can choose on its own, depending with your architecture, it can choose to take the token again and re-authenticate just to make sure it's the user exists, which is not necessary. So you can design your backend the way you want it because the authentication is already done on the gateway. So that's optional. The gateway authenticates, sends you the authenticated token. If you need to do further authentication, then that's now up to your structure. I hope I've answered your question. Great. Any other question?
On my end, yes, maybe for existing applications or system,
yeah,
are there support on how to integrate the APIs or the Sapien API to the system, to the already existing system?
Yes. So what happens is if you have an existing application in the backend currently, and maybe a whole architecture already for backend and frontend already integrated, you can start moving to a gateway structure easily because you'll just need to set up the gateway first. And of course, for the developers on the backend, you don't really need to authenticate, or not authenticate, you don't really need to call the gateway. It's the other way around. The gateway calls the backend. So we have set up the gateway, then log into the gateway, say this is where this service is located, this is where this service is located. So then transition for the whole system will be the front-end guy to change their base URL to the gateway's URL where it's hosted. Okay? So that's the only change that needs to be done for an existing application to move to a more gateway structure-like application. So okay, let me share my screen. Any other question? Okay. Okay, so I've already logged in. So what Sapien allows you to do, and of course, this demo is basically to show you how a gateway works and just that logic to sink in. So I want to show you before I go to this. Let me see if I can push. So I have the gateway running locally so for this demo. I'll also show you this, which is, just a minute. Yeah. So we have, let's do a quick structure here. So I created 2 applications. Yeah, these are quick express Node.js applications. So I named it service 1. I don't know if it's visible. Let me just enlarge. So we have service 1, then we have service 2. So these are the services we'll use to test how the gateway works, how it routes that traffic. So in terms of the routes, service 1, we have the slash, the base, which returns a service 1 response with a status of 200. And of course, there was no error, so that was a false. Then we have service 2, which returns a service 2 response. So we'll check using this message variable on that JSON object. So you can see my backend services, which is service 1 and service 2, I'm dealing with JSON, meaning I return to the client a JSON format. So if the client wants XML format, then the gateway should be able to convert this JSON to an XML. Yeah? So I already created an app here, but to create an app, you just click on create. Of course, the name should be lowercase. I think for people who have already used platforms like Heroku and such, you've already seen their naming conventions. So for the app name, should be all in lowercase, should not contain any special characters apart from the hyphens, and the app name should be unique because the traffic will be routed to your app. So this allows for an organization or for developers to create multiple gateways within this Sapien gateway. So you have, so like this is the gateway for the Board Hub application, which we mentioned earlier. So this is for the demo. I can create multiple gateways. So when you create an app, which is a gateway within the whole Sapien architecture, you get a URL. You get now the base URL that we are saying the front-end team should now change their base URL to this to point to the gateway. So for Sapien, we have for the board app gateway, basically it's your app name, then the gateway URL, the domain. Then for Sapien Taros, same thing. Sapien, you can see it's HTTPS, so the traffic will be converted. Yeah, but I'm using locally, so I think the protocol conversion that logic is clear. So just click on this Sapien trial just to show you what it looks like inside. So we have a few analytics. Currently, we have the request rate, where we have on this day, there were this number of requests. On this day, there were this number of requests. And of course, we put a default interview of 5 minutes. Also, you can see request per IP. So this is my localhost IP, meaning I've hit this gateway for this application 11 times. So you can be able to see a whole analytics of which IP are hitting your gateway. And these IPs are the client front-end IPs, maybe even domains if it translates to that. So this is a quick analytics of which IPs are basically hitting your API, your gateway, and at what rate are they hitting your gateway. So we try to make the dashboard quite simple for use, but quite powerful. So there are packages, of course. I'm using the performance package. We have the app name, the app URL, as we mentioned. So this is the URL your front-end guy will call the request to. Okay, and I'll show you an example. So we have the URL. This is the service definition. So I told you we already have the service 1, which is this one here. And we have the service 2, which is the other one. So my service 1 is running on port 3001. Service 2 is running on 3002. So if the front-end team hits this URL and does /service 1, okay? So let me take this. I'll show you from this angle. Okay. So if front-end guys does this, Sapien trial the domain or the URL given from the gateway and does a /service 1. This should tell the gateway this request or the front end is requesting for the data in this URL. Okay, if I do service 2, it should tell the traffic should go to service 2, this URL port 3002, not 3001. Is that logic clear? So from the gateway, you're able to define multiple backend services. And when the user hits the URL / the name of your backend service, then it redirects traffic to this URL. Are we clear on that? Any queries? Because this is basically what a gateway is. This is the core of the gateway, routing traffic. Okay. We also have the request body conversion, where we have now if the incoming request is in JSON, so we have the incoming request body and we have the outgoing. So as a client, I want, as a backend, I want to receive JSON data only. So if the front end sends the request body as XML, it will convert that XML to JSON. Okay? If I'm a backend and the front end wants XML only, and I'm only using JSON, I just change that to XML. If the incoming is, so you're able to do what we are calling the protocol, the request translations from JSON to XML and so forth. Authentication, you have basic, which is you provide, the basic is the consumer key, the consumer key and the secret. For the basic, you create a base 64 of that. We have, yes, the basic is the base 64 of your consumer key and secret. We have custom. So for custom is when you already have an authentication module on your end. Okay, so you already have developed an authentication module. So for custom, it will check it will check your URL that you give it where you have your authentication, and it basically sends your authentication request for login and all that to that definition. Ignore authentication routes. This is what I was saying. You can ignore the login route, the logout route, reset password, forgot password. So you can define them here with a comma. Then we have URL whitelisting. You can specify which IPs should hit your backend, specific IPs. So maybe you only want people in a certain area and you know their IP addresses. So you can be able to just put it separate by a comma, and any traffic that is not in that IP address, then it will be blocked. So we'll do a test here. We have, so I'll just highlight, because I can't use the HTTPS on the local, I'll highlight how, for those who want to build their own gateways, I wrote an article, I think I'll share. Just a moment. Let me just share before I forget on that. On how, when you're building or routing this request based on the services, how best you can be able to route that traffic. Of course, there is a web server angle, which I highlighted in the documentation, in the article. So you'll be able to set up your own gateway if need be. Okay? So it was something I searched on LinkedIn, so I decided to write an article. And of course, I'll give the admin if required. So this is the article. So hosting custom subdomains. So this is what it uses. So what we'll do is I'll just go to this. We have the app name as Sapien trial. So I'll do, my one is running on, my backend is running on port 3000. So I'll hit the root, but now for the gateway and how we set up the gateway to capture where the request should head to, we are picking the header. And that is what now that documentation I've sent will show you how to set the headers based on the incoming requests. So we have a header called subdomain. and I'll put the app name at the subdomain. So this tells the gateway that any request that comes, so this can be /something / whatever you want. So we have this URL, port 3000, is the same as this. But now, because I'm locally, I just use this. Then / where you want the app that you want this traffic to redirect to. So the app is Sapien trial. So if we do that and we come and do, so if, where is my backend? So if I come to service 1 and say, this is view, this is routes. So this is a GET request to this. So let me add one here and say this is space. Maybe this is a GET request to that. Service 1. Let's do a quick one. So we have two routes. We have one on the route, the request on the default route, which is a /. Then also another GET path for the Spaciatech, which is /Spaciatech. So if I come here and do that, so this is GET Sapien trial. Let me check if my backend is running. Okay, so GET request Sapien trial. There's no authentication. Setting service 1. Okay. So I want to hit this app. Then I specify which microservice I want to hit. I want to hit service 1, okay, which we've already done this service definition. So the terminal I've just opened below here, this is running, this is service 1. So this is service 1, you can see from here. This is the service 1 endpoint. So we should see a GET request to the root path once I hit this service 1. Okay, so we are saying for this microservice, service 1, hit the root / like the root path, the root API. So you can see it has returned service 1 response, which is what we have here. So let's say for the same microservice, we want to get details on Spaciatech. So I'll just do a / Spaciatech for the same service. So that will return, where we go? Space, yeah, tech, where I written it all. Okay, so service 1, space tech. So we have service 1 / where is it? Just a moment. Is a 4. So we don't have a /. So you see it's hitting the service 1, which is our first microservice. And it's saying we don't have a Spaciatech because once we created, we didn't reload. I'm not using NodeMon, so NodeMon. So let me just restart that. So if I do this, I should get service 1 Spaciatech response, which is what we have here. So that also applies to the second service. So you can see we have one request, which is today, July 8th. At that time, we have these other 5 requests at this time, which is 9. So you get that quick analytics. Of course, I'm still using the local. So from 11 to 16, we've hit it 16 times from locally. So the same applies to service 2. Yeah? So if we, same logic. So instead of service 1, I just put service 2 and I hit the base. So if I go here, I should see a successful GET request. This now is the response that gets to the client. And of course, if you look at service 2 quickly, we have service 2 response. Okay, so let's try now do a quick conversion. So let's say our outgoing, we need it to be in XML. So I'll just save that. So if I come to this section, we hit our service 1 again. You remember the response for service 1. It's instead of returning a JSON, now it returns an XML because we've put in our setting that we need our data to come as XML from the backend of the client. If the client was sending XML and we want the backend to receive JSON, then we leave it as it is. But if so we say the incoming will be XML from the client, then what I'll return as a response will be a JSON. So what we've done currently is this remains as JSON because the client is basically sending, of course it's empty, but basically it's a default with a JSON field. So the outgoing, we want it to be in XML. So client sends JSON, as we return XML, JSON, XML. So if there is other way the client sends XML, then the backend sends JSON. Are we together? Because I think that's what I really wanted to highlight on how our gateway routes traffic. Of course, the request conversion, app type. So let's say I want to use API key. Once I save, what happens is I'll be able to get configs for the consumer key and the API key, the ones I need to use. If I use, let's see, basic, do a save. So the system generates keys that you can use on your backend to now continue, on your front end to now authenticate to the gateway so that your request can be successfully moved to the backend. Okay, is that all right? I think in terms of how Sapien gateway works and how any other normal gateway works, then that's the logic basically. And I think with that, unless there are questions, I think the point on how a gateway works and how it can benefit organizations to better their infrastructure, I think that's well highlighted. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Collins, for the presentation. If you've got any question, you can just raise your hand, ask for the mic, or put it on the chat. Collins, are the audience prepared for the question? Maybe on my end, the question I could ask.
Yeah.
How does the Sapien API differentiate itself from which API is API management solution?
So what we are, okay, so for the Sapien API, we are not doing API management per se, because now API management will entail it will entail you being able to even get documentations for the API. There's a lot that goes to API management. So what Sapien is focusing on is basically ensuring that your traffic is, of course, from a security angle, compliance, and all that we discuss on throttling and all that. So Sapien main goal is to ensure the front-end guys have no hard time dealing with the back-end team, and requests can be converted and all that. So making just life easier for the dev community. So it doesn't, of course, in the later versions, we'll bring in that aspect of API management, which is also a big thing, and we can discuss on that. But Sapien Africa basically is routing traffic, of course, compliance with the GDPR, which is very important if you are building applications currently with the data protection and all. So that's the main focus of Sapien Gateway.
Yeah, thank you. Then with the current trend of the the booming of the AI.
Yes.
How does Sapien API fit to that booming of the AI?
Of the AI.
Yeah, the booming trend of the AI.
So, of course, with how AI is proceeding, the Sapien gateway can, of course, and this is a feature that, as you've brought up, there's this AI trend, which will greatly impact how gateways work. So the gateways now need to be intelligent enough to be able to see. Probably an example would be this IP has called our API or this app for many times, so it will be able to block that specific traffic without having the need for human intervention. So of course, the API space will greatly affect how the gateways work. It will make it more intelligent so that we don't need the users to do a lot in terms of configuring, tracking the logs. So there's a whole range of things that the API can assist when it comes to gateway upgrading and all that, the new gateways. So of course, that's why we are releasing the Sapien gateway to an open source community, so that because we are many developers, we are too many. So we are able to, everyone is able to bring a contribution to this platform. And of course, we have the plans of rewards and all that, because this needs to be out there for the developers to use it for their own projects without any charge, okay, and make their platforms better. So that's the whole thing. And this, as I said initially, this is the only African-born developed gateway. And currently it's more or less, okay, that's another story. But Sapien, I was almost talking about the cost. But as long as we are taking it open source, so there's two angles. From my angle, I don't think we'll limit for developers to upgrade the system and sell it on their end. Not sell it, but use it in client applications. I don't think we have an issue with that, because our main goal is, let's have an African solution where we manage the data that passes through. We don't have our data going through Europe, then comes back to Africa. Then, so we make it compliant. We have developers adding their content. Of course, we review and all that, but it's something that we own as Africa and as Kenya, that this is our gateway. Yeah. Of course, I'm open to, if you want to develop your own gateway and you have more ideas, just call me. I have no issue.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that time when you'll be choosing to release out on the public,
yeah,
just call me out. We shall do that announcement on our channel.
Sure, I will. Thank you.
Yeah. If there's no any other question, we can call it a night. Then the recording will be shared with the other resources that Collins would share out for the session.
Yeah. So if there are no